I'm Naomi Keller, 32, an event planner and the oldest daughter in my family. The string lights overhead shimmered like champagne bubbles, casting soft glows across the yard. Blue and pink paper lanterns drifted slightly in the July breeze, dancing with the faint hum of outdoor speakers. A giant balloon arch framed the main table, where pastel cupcakes and party favors stood in neat, Instagram-worthy rows. The cotton candy machine hissed softly beside the rented bouncy castle. It was picture-perfect down to the hand-painted sign that read, "He or she, let's see," and yet. I stood alone near the hedges, forgotten, like a server who'd finished their shift and didn't belong in the family photo. Guests had started arriving an hour ago, most of them clutching wrapped boxes or joking loudly about Team Boy and Team Girl. I greeted them, of course I did, smiled, nodded, even offered a few napkins when someone spilled lemonade, but not once did anyone ask, "Hey, Naomi, did you plan all this?" My younger sister, Ava, floated around in a gauzy white dress that clung perfectly to her round belly. She was radiant in that smug, untouchable way pregnant women often are when everyone orbits them like they invented reproduction. Her husband, Josh, trailed behind her like a well-dressed satellite, holding her mocktail and taking phone videos. I saw my mother by the punch bowl. She was laughing with Aunt Carol, telling her about the bakery Ava picked out all by herself. My jaw clenched. She didn't. I murmured to no one. I did. I picked the bakery. I called 5 of them. Ava sent me one Pinterest board. No one noticed me whispering to plastic cups. "Excuse me," I said finally, stepping toward the welcome table where my cousin Maddie was placing name tags. "Hey, Maddie. Could I maybe— Oh, Naomi. Could you grab more forks from the kitchen? We're running low." It wasn't a question. She didn't look up. I turned, biting back something sharp. My heels caught in the grass, and I staggered slightly, regaining balance like a trained professional because that's what I was. I had planned dozens of events, corporate launches, outdoor weddings with hurricane contingencies. I'd pulled off a gala for a client with 5 costume changes and a petting zoo. But here, at my sister's baby gender reveal party, I was an errand girl with invisible hands. From the corner of my eye, I saw a man in a crisp polo talking to Josh, one of his college friends. Maybe he pointed at the decor and said, "Dude, your wife killed it. Seriously. This looks like a magazine shoot." Josh grinned. "Yeah, man. She's got the eye." I walked toward the patio, passing my dad on the way. He was mid-story about Ava's childhood finger painting days and how she always knew how to make things look pretty. He gestured toward the dessert table like she had frosted it herself. That was when I heard the voice behind me. "Excuse me, ma'am." I turned. A man in a dark blue staff shirt hired security for the event. Ironically, someone I had coordinated and briefed stood at the garden gate. "I'm going to have to ask you to move back toward the guest area. This section's just for family and organizers." I opened my mouth, then closed it. "I'm family." He didn't blink. "Are you Ava's side or Josh's?" My tongue felt thick in my mouth. I glanced past him at the caterer setting down more charcuterie. "I'm her sister," I said finally. Still nothing. He was just doing his job. I had trained him for this exact situation: identify staff, monitor VIP zones, ensure guests didn't wander where they weren't supposed to. "I'm also the organizer," I added, quietly. "I funded the event." Before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through the backyard. "Naomi, Naomi." Everyone turned. The voice belonged to Mrs. Mendez, Ava's obstetrician, of all people, and probably the most respected woman in the crowd. She stood near the front table with one hand raised, her lipstick flawless, her heels sunk half an inch into the lawn. I just found out. She called. You're the one behind all this. The planner. There was a ripple. Heads turning. Forks pausing midair. I nodded, not sure what to say. Mrs. Mendez tilted her head with a warm, amused smile. Darling, it's exquisite. I've been to 3 reveal parties this year, and this is on another level. Ava didn't mention you were a professional. You even paid for the rentals. She said, that's generous. This must have cost a fortune. And just like that, the air changed. I felt it before I heard it, the lull. The silence that wasn't total quiet, but the absence of chatter. Someone lowered the music slightly. The cousin who had passed me earlier turned back around. Josh blinked. Ava's smile faltered. I didn't move. I didn't smile or wave or take a bow. I just stood there and felt the collective realization settle on everyone like confetti falling in reverse. It was the first time anyone really looked at me that day. If you've ever stood in a room full of people who forgot you existed until your worth became undeniable, drop a comment or let me know where you're watching from. Hit like or subscribe if you've ever been the silent one holding everything together. Back on the lawn. My mother finally spoke. You funded it? She asked, barely above a whisper. But I didn't answer her. Because in that moment, the crowd wasn't looking at Ava's bump. They were looking at me. And for the first time all day, the silence was mine to hold. The silence didn't last forever. It never does. Someone cleared their throat. The music resumed. A baby squealed near the swings, and the wind shifted just enough to flutter the welcome banner. But for a few full seconds, I stood in a rare, unearned spotlight, the kind that doesn't come from a microphone or applause, but from realization, the kind that turns heads, not because you asked for it, but because someone finally saw the invisible scaffolding you built for others to stand on. I didn't linger. I walked away from the hedge, toward the drink table, not because I was thirsty, but because I needed something in my hands, something to do. That's what I always did: fix things, refill things, polish the event instead of participating in it. My fingers wrapped around a lemonade glass as I tried to ignore the quiet eyes following me. Ava was whispering to Josh. Her mouth moved fast, chin lifted in that tight, performative way she had when she knew she'd been caught unprepared. You okay? Someone asked. I looked up. It was Daniel, my cousin on Dad's side. We weren't close, but we'd shared childhood Thanksgivings and the occasional sarcastic text thread about family politics. He stood beside me now, arms crossed, expression oddly soft. Yeah, I said. I'm good. He raised an eyebrow. You funded all this. I gave a tiny shrug. Yeah. Ava asked for help. She didn't think they'd be able to pull it off otherwise. Daniel nodded slowly. She didn't mention that part. She never does. He was quiet a second, then tapped the rim of his cup. Well, for what it's worth, this is the nicest party I've been to in years, and I work in hospitality. I smiled, but it didn't quite land. I felt raw, like a peeled fruit too exposed for small talk. Daniel seemed to sense it. You ever get tired of being the backbone? I didn't answer. Instead, I looked around the yard. It was strange how everyone still clung to their little teams, their colored pins and blue-pink accessories, like the earlier moment hadn't shifted something. My mother had drifted away toward Aunt Carol again, her expression unreadable. I found myself thinking back to the beginning of it all when Ava first told me she was pregnant. She had called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice fluttering with nerves and drama. I need your help, she had said. It has to be perfect. And I had said yes. Instantly. Stupidly. Because that's what I do. Say yes to people who never remember to say thank you. I helped her craft the announcement post, edited her captions for the sonogram photos, Even bought her the soft blue wrap dress she wore today, because she said nothing fit right. And she couldn't deal with shopping right now. When she mentioned a gender reveal party, it spiraled fast. She wanted something classy but Instagrammable. She sent me inspiration boards, most of which I had already saved in my own folders from prior clients. I handled it all. I rented the garden space from a client who owed me a favor. I negotiated with caterers, paid the deposit for the DJ, bought the cake from a boutique bakery 2 towns over. I even custom-ordered the color bomb cannons that would go off in 15 minutes because she didn't want smoke or glitter. Just something soft and cinematic, she'd said. She didn't ask what it cost me, and I didn't offer. Because a part of me believed, foolishly, that if I gave her everything, she might finally see me. Naomi Ava's voice called from across the yard. I turned. She was walking toward me, her smile brittle. Josh trailed behind her, confused but obedient. Hey, she said, too brightly. Can we talk for a sec? I nodded and followed her behind the lemonade stand, just out of earshot. Her tone dropped the moment we were alone. Why did you say that? Say what to Mrs. Mendez about funding the party? You made it sound like I didn't say anything. She announced it herself. Ava's eyes narrowed. You could have corrected her. I didn't lie. No? But you didn't need to bask in it either. I laughed, low and sharp. Bask in it, Ava. I was asked to step away by the security I hired. I've been here for 4 hours and not one person acknowledged my work. Her lip curled. So what? You want a medal? I thought you said you were happy to help. I was... Until I realized I wasn't even invited to be seen. She crossed her arms over her belly. This party isn't about you. No, I said. It never is. We stared at each other for a moment. Then she softened just a bit. You know I love you, she said, but sometimes you make things harder than they need to be. I almost laughed again, but it stuck in my throat. You think asking for acknowledgement is making things harder. I think you expect people to read your mind, she said. If you wanted credit, why didn't you just say so? Because I shouldn't have to. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't. I just nodded, swallowed, and stepped back. Fine, I said. Let's go launch your cannons. The announcement came over the speakers a few minutes later. Everyone, gather around the lawn for the big moment. Guests rushed forward with their phones raised. Children screamed. Someone started a countdown. Ava and Josh stood in the center, holding the color bomb tubes in either hand. The crowd cheered. 3, 2, 1. The air split open with a soft cloud of rose gold light and luminous. A girl. Screams erupted. Cheers. My mom wept into a napkin. Josh kissed Ava's cheek while her friends clapped and danced around them. I stood at the edge of the circle, just behind the second row of guests, watching it all like a spectator. No one noticed I had ordered a second mini cannon to fire automatically from the back corner for symmetry, for photos, for balance. I'd programmed the release myself, because the staff didn't understand timing curves. It went off precisely 4 seconds after the main cannons. No one turned. But I saw the pink mist catch the late afternoon sun, hovering like a blush on the sky. If you've ever given your whole heart to a moment just so others could have their joy, tell me about it in the comments. I see you. You're not alone. I took a few steps back, away from the grass and the crowd and the applause. I let them have it. The camera flashes, the shared secrets, the stories they'd tell years from now about the day we found out. They could have that. I had something else. I had the silence that comes after a job well done, and the ache of knowing no one would remember who made it possible. The days after the party passed like soft static calls, posts, tags, and texts that mentioned everything except me. Ava uploaded a carousel of perfectly curated photos that night. I knew which ones she'd choose before I even saw them. Her laughing with Josh beneath the balloon arch, the color cannon mid-bloom, cupcakes half-bitten on elegant gold trays. Each caption glowed with filters and emojis. Still crying, she wrote, "Thank you to everyone who made today so magical. Baby girl is already so loved. Maha gender reveal. Maha blessed. Ha grateful." I scrolled through the comments. Friends gushed. Extended family offered names. Even her college roommate posted a string of heart eye emojis and said, "You've always been such a creative goddess. Everything looked stunning." No mention of me, not even a tag. And I know what you might be thinking. Who cares? It's just a social media post. But that's the thing. It's never just a post. Not when it's your own sister. Not when you put thousands of dollars and weeks of work into building something beautiful only to be erased by a caption. I stared at the screen for a long time. My finger hovered over the heart button. I didn't press it. Instead, I opened my work folder and moved the Ava reveal file to a subfolder called Uncredited. Then I went to the fridge and microwaved leftover takeout I barely tasted. That weekend, my mom stopped by unannounced. She knocked twice and let herself in, like always. I was still in leggings and a sweatshirt, sitting at my dining table with invoices spread in front of me. I didn't bother pretending I was glad to see her. "I just came to drop off Ava's cake platter," she said, holding a floral porcelain tray wrapped in plastic. I nodded. "Leave it by the sink." She hesitated, then sat down across from me, her purse still hanging off her shoulder. "I talked to your sister." "Of course she did. She said you were upset, that you felt left out." I said nothing. "She's pregnant. Naomi. She's emotional. It's not always easy to remember every detail when you're under that kind of pressure." She remembered to tag her nail tech and her florist. I said quietly, "But not me." My mother pursed her lips. "That's not the point." "No, it is," I said, voice rising just slightly. "It always is. I'm always the one doing the invisible labor, and no one ever thinks to look up and say thank you. She's your sister, and I'm her sister." I snapped, but somehow that doesn't come with the same grace. There was a long silence. Then my mom took off her sunglasses and folded her hands in her lap. "I think," she said slowly, "that maybe you like being invisible." My heart stopped for a second. She continued, "You do all this work. Naomi, you run your business. You make things perfect. You don't ask for help. But the second someone doesn't notice, you fall apart." "I don't fall apart," I said. "You stop answering calls. You get cold. You do what your dad used to do." I looked away. The silence between us was thick and old. It wasn't just about a gender reveal anymore. It never was. "Do you remember your 6th birthday party?" she asked. I frowned. "Not really. We had it in the backyard." "You wanted a unicorn cake. Your father forgot to pick it up." She smiled faintly. "You went inside and baked your own, a lopsided vanilla thing with too much food coloring. I remember watching you mix it on a stool, covered in flour, and thinking, this child doesn't wait for anyone." I didn't know what to say. My mother reached out, gently touched my hand. "You've always filled the gaps, even as a kid. But sweetie, no one claps for the glue. They just assume it'll hold." That one sentence sat heavy in my chest. I swallowed. "I don't need applause," I said. "I just want to be seen." She nodded. "I see you. I always have. Even when you were covered in flour." That night, I lay awake thinking about that stupid unicorn cake. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at the ceiling and thought about all the ways I had learned to fix things quietly, automatically without ever asking whether I wanted to. And somewhere in the stillness, I made a decision. I didn't want to be the glue anymore. The next morning, I canceled a bridal consultation. I left 2 emails unanswered. Then I packed a small suitcase and drove 3 hours out of the city to a coastal bed and breakfast I'd bookmarked but never visited. When I checked in, the hostess looked surprised. "Here for a wedding?" she asked. "No," I said. "Just me." I spent the next 2 days walking along the cliffs and listening to the ocean like it was speaking a language I'd forgotten. I left my phone on silent. I didn't check Instagram. I didn't post a single thing. I read a book cover to cover. I drank tea that didn't taste like obligation. I stared at the waves and let my shoulders drop. It was the first time in years I had done something that served no one but myself. The morning I left, the hostess handed me a small wrapped muffin for the road. "You seem like someone who gives a lot," she said gently. "Don't forget to give something back to yourself too." The kindness almost undid me. I cried for 5 minutes in the parking lot, head against the steering wheel, breath shaking like I'd been holding it in since childhood. And when I drove back into the city, I didn't go home. I went to my sister's. She answered the door in pajama pants, rubbing her eyes. "Naomi, I just want to say one thing," I said. "Then I'll go." She stepped aside. I stood in her entryway and looked at her, the little sister I'd protected, supported, watched, become a woman and a mother to be. "You don't have to say thank you," I said. "You don't even have to like me. But from now on, if you want something from me, you'll ask. And if I say yes, it won't be quiet. I'm done being invisible." Her eyes were wide. She didn't interrupt. I turned, walked back to my car, and didn't look back. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was a boundary. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize for building it. I didn't expect anything after that. Not a call, not a letter, not even a text. Ava was stubborn like our father used to be, her pride ironed flat into her silence, and I was tired of offering olive branches that turned into whittled sticks in my own hands. So I turned inward. That week, I went back to my apartment and started clearing things out. Not a dramatic purge, just quiet edits. I boxed up old planners from past events, deleted folders labeled family projects, unsubscribed from group chats where I was only summoned to fix problems. My apartment felt larger than I remembered, like a hotel room I hadn't dared to fully inhabit until now. And for once, I started asking myself strange questions. What if I hosted something for myself? A birthday, a launch party for my business anniversary, a quiet rooftop dinner where I didn't serve anyone but got to sit still and be poured into. I couldn't answer them yet. But just asking felt like an act of rebellion. 3 days later, my phone buzzed while I was organizing my spice rack. An unknown number. I almost let it ring out, but something told me to answer. "Naomi." It was Josh. I paused. "Yeah, I know this is weird, but I was wondering if we could talk. Just us." His voice sounded different, not rehearsed, not defensive. I agreed, cautiously. We met the next afternoon at a cafe halfway between my apartment and the baby store where Ava had just finalized her registry. Josh was already seated when I arrived. A nervous smile stretched across his face. He stood when he saw me. "Hey," he said. "Thanks for coming." I sat down. "What's this about?" He exhaled. "Look, I owe you an apology. A real one. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I didn't realize how much you did for that party. I thought Ava had planned most of it." I raised an eyebrow. "Did she tell you that—" He hesitated. Let me believe it. But when the invoices started coming in, and she kept forwarding things with your name all over them, I started putting it together. Then Mrs. Mendez sent us a thank you card addressed to you." I blinked. That part surprised me. I'm not saying this to make it up to you, Josh continued. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. And it wasn't fair. You did something generous and beautiful, and we didn't treat you like family, or even like a human being. For a moment, I didn't speak. Then I said, quietly, I never needed Ava to repay me. I just needed to not be erased. Josh nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. He pulled something out of his coat pocket and slid it across the table. A small envelope. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Naomi, I don't know how to say thank you without sounding like I'm trying to patch over everything too fast. So, I'll just start here. I'm sorry. I forgot that just because someone's strong doesn't mean they don't bleed. Ava. My fingers trembled slightly. Josh looked down. She wanted to write more, but she said she needed to sit with it first. That maybe she spent too much time being the center of things. She didn't even see what it cost you to hold her up. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But I just nodded, folded the note, and tucked it back inside the envelope. We talked for a little while longer. Nothing heavy. Just surface things. Crib shopping. Names they were debating. Whether I'd consider being in the delivery room when the time came. I didn't answer that last one. Not yet. But I didn't say no. That night, I sat on my balcony, tea in hand, city humming beneath me. I reread the note. Every word. Slowly. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And that meant more than I was ready to admit out loud. The next few weeks passed gently. Ava and I didn't talk much, but we didn't fight either. That silence between us wasn't cold anymore. It had texture, potential, like soil after rain. Then, one morning, I got an email. Subject client referral high-profile event. It was from a woman named Dana Klein, an executive at a luxury design firm. She'd attended the gender reveal party as a distant friend of Josh's family. In her words, I was blown away by the layout, the timing, the elegance. I tracked down the organizer because I've been to 5 corporate events this year that didn't hold a candle to what you pulled off. I'd love to discuss hiring you for a product launch in early spring. I sat back in my chair and laughed, actually laughed. Ava hadn't tagged me, she hadn't mentioned me. And still, my work found its own mouth, its own voice, its own path. Later that day, I received a package. No name on the outside, but the return label read, Bumble and Moss Artisan Florals. Inside was a bouquet, not loud or dramatic, just soft lavender, pale eucalyptus, and white peonies. A note attached. You deserved more than a thank you. But here's one. Anyway. Mom. I held the flowers to my face and closed my eyes. Something in me unclenched. That weekend, I attended a friend's engagement dinner not as the planner, not as the help, just as a guest. I wore a dress that had nothing to do with practicality. I brought wine. I laughed without scanning the room for tasks. Halfway through the evening, my friend pulled me aside. You seem different, she said. Lighter. Someone else chimed in. I smiled. Maybe I'm just not holding so much anymore. Because here's the thing. No one tells you about being the strong one, the reliable one, the behind-the-scenes magician one day. If you're not careful, you'll disappear into the seams. But not anymore. I wasn't stitching other people's joy from threads of my own silence. I wasn't swallowing my voice just to keep the peace. I was learning slowly, imperfectly, that it's okay to take up space, that being seen wasn't selfish, that giving didn't have to mean surrender, and maybe I was done waiting for permission to exist. A few days before Christmas, Ava called me, not a text, not a voice note, an actual call, mid-morning, while I was finalizing floral mock-ups for the Klein product launch. Hey, she said, her voice hesitant. Do you have a few minutes? I paused. I do. There was a soft breath on the other end, like she'd been holding it for a while. I know we haven't really talked. She began. Not really. Not since the party. That's true. Another pause. I was wondering if you'd come with me to the final ultrasound. Josh has a board meeting and, well, I just didn't want to go alone. I didn't answer right away, not because I was angry, but because part of me still wasn't sure how much I was willing to give again. She seemed to sense my hesitation. No pressure, really. I thought maybe we could try starting over, or sideways, or something. I smiled despite myself. Sideways. Yeah. It's like starting over. But you still remember the stuff that hurt. That line stuck with me. So I said yes. We didn't talk much in the car on the way to the clinic. She fiddled with her necklace, and I looked out the window, watching the December light flicker against half-frozen sidewalks. Inside, the technician greeted us with a cheerful voice. We're taking our last peek before the big day. Huh. Ava nodded, lying back on the exam table. I stood by her side, arms crossed, unsure of what I was even doing there. Then the image appeared on the monitor. Tiny fingers, a delicate spine, a flicker of movement like a slow wave. I glanced at Ava. Her eyes were wet. She's so big now, she whispered. I can't believe it. I stayed quiet, watching the little heartbeat pulse like a secret drum. Do you think? Ava's voice caught. Do you think I'm going to be good at this? The vulnerability in her question knocked something loose in me. You'll learn, I said softly. That's what we all do. She turned toward me. How did you know how to take care of everyone I didn't? I replied. I just kept doing it because no one else stepped in. She swallowed. I think I always thought you liked it. Being the one who held things together? I didn't mind, I said. But I hated being treated like I didn't have needs. 2. We sat with that for a moment. After the appointment, she took me to lunch at a small bistro near the hospital. Just the two of us. No Instagram. No audience. Just sisters. Picking at salads and slices of pear tart. Talking about maternity pillows and childhood bedrooms and the time she stole my favorite sweater in 8th grade. I still have it, she said with a laugh. I wear it when I'm sad. I blinked. You never gave it back. You never asked. I smirked. Typical. But it didn't sting. That night, she sent me a photo. The sweater. On her. Her bump stretching the hem. Her hand resting gently against her belly. Still smells like you, she wrote. In a good way. I didn't know what to reply, so I didn't. Not right away. Some things don't need words. Christmas came quietly. I spent it with friends this year. No family dinner, no annual chaos, just warm food, music, a fire, and board games that lasted too long into the night. No one expected me to plan anything. I just showed up, and that was enough. On December 29th, my doorbell rang. It was Ava. She looked flushed, hair pulled back messily, a half-panicked look on her face. I think it's time, she said. Can you come with me? I froze. Where's Josh in another city? His flight got delayed. He's trying to get back. But I don't want to wait. I need someone now. I nodded and grabbed my coat. We barely spoke on the way to the hospital. Her breathing was shallow. My hands were shaking. All the years between us, the resentment, the silence, the shared rooms and slammed doors faded into something softer, older, like we were kids again, hiding under blankets during a thunderstorm. She gripped my hand in the elevator. I'm scared. I know. We checked in. A nurse led us to a birthing suite. I helped her change into the hospital gown, folded her clothes neatly, rubbed her back when the contractions hit. Hours passed. Then more. At one point, she looked at me, face streaked with sweat and tears. "Don't let go." "I won't." And I didn't. Not when the monitor beeped. Not when her voice cracked. Not when the room filled with nurses and that terrifying, wonderful scream split the silence. A girl. A perfect, wrinkled, furious little girl. The doctor smiled. "Congratulations, Mama." Ava sobbed, holding her child like she was glass and gold and thunder all at once. Then she looked at me. "Naomi," she whispered. "Do you want to hold her?" I froze, and for the first time in years, I let myself reach for something soft without earning it. I held my niece, this tiny, loud, unfinished miracle, and felt something settle in my bones. Not recognition, not redemption, but belonging. We didn't take a picture. We didn't post anything. It was just us, in that sterile room, as snow started to fall outside the window. Later, Ava drifted to sleep. I stayed beside her, holding the baby while the nurses came and went. She was so small, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the world. I was just there, present. Enough. Around 3 a.m. Ava stirred. "Hey," she whispered, voice rough. I forgot to ask. "What?" She smiled weakly. "Do you want to be her godmother?" I blinked. "Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything?" I nodded, heart full and silent. "She already knows you," Ava added. "She kicked every time she heard your voice." And just like that, something broke in me again, but this time, in the best way. Not out of grief, but relief. I stayed with them until morning, watched the sun climb over the horizon, watched a new life yawn and blink and wrap her fingers around mine. There were no speeches, no announcements, no decorations, just love. And it was enough. More than enough. The morning after the birth felt like waking inside someone else's dream. The hospital was quiet, save for the low buzz of machines and the occasional rustle of a nurse's shoes down the hall. Ava was asleep. The baby nestled on her chest, rising and falling with her breath. I stood by the window, hands wrapped around a lukewarm paper cup of coffee, watching frost paint itself slowly across the glass. I hadn't slept, but I didn't feel tired. I felt clean, like something had been rinsed from me overnight. Eventually, Ava stirred. She blinked, adjusting to the soft gray light, then turned her head toward me. "You're still here," she said, her voice barely audible. "Of course." She smiled. A few minutes later, a nurse came in, offered to take the baby for a routine checkup. Ava nodded sleepily, and we both watched as the small bundle disappeared through the door. I pulled the blanket up over Ava's shoulders. She looked fragile in a way I'd never seen before, her usual sharpness worn smooth by exhaustion. The fierce armor of her pride cracked open. "Do you remember when we were kids?" she whispered. "And we made that fake hospital in the basement." I smiled. "Yeah, you made me the nurse. You were the nurse. You always fixed everything." She paused, looking down at her hands. "I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner." Something caught in my throat. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "Not really. I just needed space to figure out where I end and you begin." She nodded. "I know. I think I used to rely on you because it was easier than becoming someone who could stand alone." We sat in silence, the weight of years resting quietly between us. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. "I'm naming her after you." I froze. "What, her middle name?" She said. "Naomi." I blinked hard. "I thought you'd hate it." She continued. "But it just felt right. She's going to grow up strong, grounded, a little stubborn. I want her to know that comes from somewhere." I turned away, pretending to sip my coffee. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know. That's what made it matter. Over the next few weeks, life took on a new rhythm. I visited Ava often, sometimes to help, sometimes just to hold the baby while she showered or cried or stared into space. She never asked me to plan anything. She didn't delegate. She just let me be there. And that was enough. One evening, as I rocked my niece in the nursery, Ava came in quietly. "You're good with her," she said. I looked down at the small face sleeping in my arms. "I never thought I'd be," I said. "I spent so long being the one who built things for other people to stand on. I forgot I could hold something fragile without breaking it." Ava leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Do you ever think about having one of your own?" I hesitated. "I used to," I said. "But lately I've been thinking more about building a life I don't need a vacation from. If that includes kids, great. If not, I still want it to feel like mine." She nodded. "That makes sense." Later, before I left, she handed me a card. Inside was a photo of the three of us, me, Ava, and the baby, taken the morning she was born. The hospital room behind us looked like a dreamscape of white sheets and window light. The caption beneath it read, "Sometimes the strongest women are the ones no one sees until everything depends on them." I didn't say anything. I just hugged her, longer than I had in years. A few months passed. Spring came. The product launch I had designed for Dana Klein's firm was a stunning success, featured in a regional lifestyle magazine, picked up by a few blogs. For the first time, I didn't downplay the credit. I let them put my name on the press release. I even stepped into a few interviews, shaking hands without shrinking. I also started saying no more often. No to last-minute requests from cousins. No to just a quick favor messages at 10 p.m. No to projects that didn't honor my time or my boundaries. And surprisingly, no one died. The world didn't fall apart when I stopped bleeding for it. In fact, it got quieter, calmer. Mine. One afternoon, I hosted a dinner on my rooftop. Nothing extravagant. Just a few friends. A simple menu. Candles flickering in old mason jars. For once, I didn't spend the whole evening checking plates or pouring drinks. I sat. I laughed. I let someone else refill my glass. Near the end of the night, as the city hummed softly around us, my friend Cam leaned over and said, "You're different now." I raised an eyebrow. Different how he grinned, like someone who finally stepped out from behind the curtain and realized the spotlight doesn't burn. I laughed. Then I looked around at the people I'd chosen, at the space I'd made for myself, and realized he was right. I wasn't hiding anymore. A week later, Ava invited me over. When I arrived, she was in the nursery, singing something low and off-key while folding tiny socks. The baby Naomi Grace was babbling on the floor beside her, gnawing on a plush giraffe. Ava looked up and smiled. "You hungry?" We ate in the living room. Nothing fancy, takeout pasta and garlic bread. We talked about the baby's teething. A weird dream Ava had. A book I'd just finished. Ordinary things. Then, as I stood to leave, she reached for my wrist. "Wait," she said. She handed me a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet, engraved on the inside. "Thank you for building what I didn't know I needed." I didn't speak. I just put it on. If you've ever loved someone by showing up quietly, by being the bridge, the background, the invisible net, I hope you know you deserve to be held too. You deserve to be named, remembered, seen. I used to think being needed was the same as being loved, but now I know love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to stay, just as you are. Spring unfolded slowly that year, like it had nothing to prove. The air held a quiet kind of warmth, the kind that didn't demand celebration but simply offered comfort, like a blanket laid over your shoulders without a word. I found myself walking more no earbuds, no destination, just me and the rhythm of my own steps through streets I'd lived on for years but never really seen. There's something strange about rebuilding your identity in the place where it was once buried. You start to notice things. The way the barista remembers your name when you're not rushing. The way your living room feels larger when you stop hosting for the sake of being useful. The way silence becomes less like absence, more like space. I began saying yes to new kinds of invitations. A poetry reading, a weekend pottery class, a solo trip to the botanical gardens just to sketch orchids badly in a notebook I hadn't used since college. None of it was about performance. None of it made me money. But each small yes was a stitch in a fabric I'd forgotten how to wear, one meant only for me. And through all of it, Ava kept showing up, not dramatically, not in grand gestures, just in quiet, persistent ways. A text at night, Naomi slept through the night. Finally. I almost cried. A photo mid-morning, her baby, my namesake, wrapped in a blanket I'd knit years ago. Thumb in her mouth. A voicemail when I didn't answer. I know I said this already, but thank you. For everything. For staying. Even when I didn't deserve it. It took time. But little by little, we rebuilt something, not the sisterhood we had as kids, or even the strained version from our 20s, but something slower, wiser, not built on debt or duty, but choice. One afternoon in early May, I picked up baby Naomi from daycare. Ava had a dentist appointment, and Josh was stuck in traffic. I arrived 10 minutes early and waited on the bench outside, sipping iced coffee and watching the teachers corral toddlers like a patient herd of cats. When the door finally opened and the children poured out, I stood, scanning the crowd. Then I saw her chubby legs, wobbly steps, curls starting to frame her face. She spotted me and broke into a grin so wide it tilted her entire body forward. "Mummy," she squealed, arms outstretched. It wasn't quite my name. Not yet. But I knelt down and caught her anyway, lifting her into my arms as she babbled nonsense against my ear. A teacher came over, clipboard in hand. "Your Aunt Naomi." "Right." I nodded. "She talks about you every day. Sometimes we think she thinks you're her second mom." I laughed, heart thudding in the strange, tender way it does when love catches you off guard. "Some days," I said. "I think I am." We walked back to the car slowly, her small hand gripping my finger like it was the most important thing in the world. And maybe, in that moment, it was. Later that week, Ava and I sat on her front porch as the sun went down. Naomi was asleep inside. A monitor buzzed softly between us. Ava sipped her tea. "Do you ever think we were just born into roles? Like I was the star, and you were the safety net. And no one ever asked if we liked those parts." I looked out at the street. The light flickered against the pavement, gold on gray. "I think we were handed scripts," I said. "But no one stopped us from editing them." She nodded. "You know, growing up, I was jealous of you. That caught me off guard." "Why?" "Because you were capable. You didn't need anyone. Everyone always told me I was pretty, sweet, bright. But when something broke, they asked you to fix it. And you did." I exhaled slowly. It didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a trap. "I know that now," she said. "I'm sorry for how long it took me to see it." We sat in silence for a while, letting the air settle around us. "I never told you," she added. "But when I was little, I used to sneak into your room and go through your things." I laughed. "Seriously, I'd read your notes, your journals. I just wanted to be close to the way you saw the world. I didn't even know you cared." She looked at me. "I cared more than you'll ever understand." I didn't cry, but something in me softened permanently in that moment, like a knot loosening after years of tension. We didn't say much else that night. We didn't have to. Sometimes healing doesn't come with trumpets or declarations. Sometimes it's just sitting on a porch with someone who once hurt you, watching the sky change colors, realizing you both survived and that survival didn't require winning. The following month, I started working on something new. Not for a client. For me, a small event. Invite only, no hashtags, no public list. It wasn't a birthday or a launch or a baby shower. It was a gathering of women, just women. The ones who make things happen behind the curtain. The ones who are always asked for favors but rarely asked how they're doing. The ones who were born responsible and never got to question it. I called it the Silent Architects. We met on a Sunday afternoon, on the rooftop I'd once used only for catering. There were candles, soft music, open wine bottles, and quiet laughter. I gave no speech. I passed no clipboard. But I did say one thing. Before dessert, I stood up and raised my glass. To the women who remember birthdays, who refill the soap, who sign the cards and sweep the mess. To the ones who hold the camera instead of posing. To the glue. The table went still. You deserve to be seen. And they were. We were. Later that night, as I cleaned up, Ava came over, baby Naomi on her hip. She won't stop saying your name. She whispered, "Mummy." The baby chirped. I took her into my arms, kissing her soft cheek. Ava watched us, arms crossed, eyes glinting. "I hope she grows up like you," she said. "But I also hope she learns to rest, to take, to say no." I smiled. Maybe we can teach her both. When I got home that night, I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window. The city blinked back at me. It used to feel too big, too fast, like I had to run to keep up. But now it felt like it was waiting. Not for me to prove something, just to live, to build something that didn't need applause, only truth, only peace, only presence. Summer arrived in quiet ripples, not with fireworks, but with long stretches of late light and warm air that clung to your skin like memory. My apartment plants thrived. I kept the windows open. Some nights, I lay on the floor with a fan humming and let the breeze wash over me while I thought about nothing. I hadn't known how full silence could feel until I stopped filling it with everyone else's needs. One Sunday morning, Ava called again. "She's walking now," she said. Really walking, not just the wobble. Full-on toddler sprint. I could hear the chaos behind her tiny feet, a clatter of toys, the unmistakable rhythm of a child discovering momentum. "Want to come by?" she asked. I did. I stopped on the way to grab strawberries and a bottle of Prosecco. Not because I had to, just because it felt right. I knocked softly at her door, and when she opened it, I saw a version of her I hadn't expected. Exhausted, makeup-free, one sock on, the other missing. "Motherhood is humbling," she said, stepping aside. "I can tell." We laughed. Naomi was in the living room, holding onto a chair like a climber approaching her summit. When she saw me, she let go. Just let go, and stumbled into my arms with a grin that stole the air from the room. "That's new," Ava said. "Surprised?" She hasn't done that for me yet. I didn't say anything. I just held her. Later, when the baby napped, Ava and I sat on the balcony with glasses of Prosecco, legs curled beneath us. "I used to think being a mom would make me feel powerful," Ava said. "But most days I just feel like a sponge." I raised an eyebrow. "You know," she continued, "soaking up everything. The guilt, the fear, the spit up. And none of it is yours. But somehow it lives on your skin." I nodded. "Sounds familiar," She looked at me. You've been doing this longer than I have, just not with a baby. I took a sip and stared out at the sky. I think I'm done being a sponge, I said. I'd rather be a mirror. Still, present, but not absorbing everything. That sounds harder. It is, but it doesn't rot you from the inside out. Ava was quiet for a while. Then she said, You've changed. Not in a scary way. Just, you don't flinch anymore when someone asks for something, because I don't say yes automatically anymore. I noticed. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I almost did, I said honestly. But I didn't want to leave until I knew I was leaving as me, not as someone begging to be seen. We sat like that for a long time. The wind touched our hair. A baby cried somewhere in another apartment. Nothing needed to be fixed. Nothing needed to be said. In early July, I attended a wedding not as the planner, not as the sister of the bride or the designated logistics machine, just a guest, a friend of the groom. I wore a dress that made no sense for comfort but felt like soft rebellion. I danced. I drank. I didn't check the time once. During dinner, the woman next to me asked what I did. I run an event company, I said. Nice, she replied. What made you start? I opened my mouth and stopped. Then I smiled. Honestly, I got tired of waiting to be invited. She laughed, thinking it was a joke. But it wasn't. It was the truest thing I'd said all night. After the wedding, I walked home in my heels, blisters blooming, headlight with wine and summer heat. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post a photo. I just walked in the warm dark like I belonged in it. And I did. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address. It was from Mrs. Mendez, the obstetrician from the gender reveal. Inside was a note on cream cardstock: Naomi. I've been in medicine for over 30 years. I've watched families implode and rebuild in the span of a single birth. But rarely do I see someone step so fully into their role without demanding credit. What you did for your sister, what you created, wasn't just generous. It was sacred. Not because of the decorations, but because you knew how to hold space. And not everyone knows how. That's a gift. Keep using it. But never forget you deserve space. 2. M. I stared at that last line for a long time. You deserve space. 2. I taped the card inside my closet door, where I could see it every morning. It became a kind of ritual. Brush teeth, pick clothes, read that line. You deserve space. Not just room to function, not just air to breathe. Space to want, to speak, to change. At Naomi's first birthday party, Ava kept it small. No theme, no balloon arches, no canon reveals. Just close friends and family in the backyard. Paper plates, a messy cake, and a playlist of lullabies and old jazz. She pulled me aside while Naomi smashed frosting into her nose. I was thinking about last year, she said. So was I. I didn't see you then, she continued. But I do now. And I know there's no going back. But if there's any way forward, there is, I said. She exhaled. You sure? I smiled. Yeah, because now I know I'm not invisible. She nodded, biting her lip to keep it together. Then Naomi, the tiny star of the day, toddled across the lawn toward me. Everyone watched as she fell into my lap like she'd been rehearsing it. My mother gasped and clapped. Josh laughed. Ava whispered. She's obsessed with you, I whispered back. I think the feeling's mutual. The camera flashed, but I didn't move. I stayed. In the frame. On purpose. If you've ever held the weight of a room while no one looked your way, I hope you know it wasn't for nothing. If you've ever waited for someone to name you, and they didn't, I hope you know that your value doesn't begin at their recognition. If you've ever built a celebration and stood outside the photo, you still mattered. You mattered the most, because without you, nothing would have stood. And now you get to choose where you stand, what you give, who you become when the lights dim and the room clears, and the silence is finally yours. And maybe that's where peace lives, not in the recognition, but in the quiet, in the knowing, in the staying.